Welcome to New Possibilities. I speak truth to power without fear. So I'm going to wait a couple of minutes before I get started. I want at least a couple of people to be on, to watch this hangout before I get started. So I'm going to give people a couple of seconds. Shout out to the people that are tuning in. I just wanted to talk about these hearings that took place today, share my brief opinion about it, and I also want to hear from you. I see that we have a few people in the house. How many of you listened to any of the hearings today? How many of you actually heard Christine Ford, Dr. Ford, give her statement? How many of you heard Brett Kavanaugh give his statement? What did you think about their statements? Who did you think was credible? I'm interested in hearing from you in the chat room. And also, if you can let me know before we get started whether or not you can hear me. Please let me know if this broadcast is choppy. I want to make sure that there's no buffering, that you all can hear me loudly and clear me and see me without interruption. So if you can throw up the ones in the chat room, I would appreciate it. I know it's people watching, man. What's up? Y'all say something. Let me know that everything's going fine. Just throw those ones up. Tell me what you think about this situation. I see it's a couple of people here, but nobody's saying anything in the chat room. I know the chat is up. Okay. Yeah, so again, I'm going to be talking about Dr. Christine Ford's testimony briefly, and I'm going to talk about Brett Kavanaugh's testimony. And for those people who don't know what's going on, you have Brett Kavanaugh. He's been nominated to replace Justice Kennedy on the Supreme Court. Now, they had a series of hearings, I think it was last week or the week before, and now these allegations have surfaced. He has been accused of sexual assault. He's been accused of attempted rape. And today, they brought one of his accusers forward. So I see we have a troll in the house. So that troll will be blocked. See, I don't mind if people disagree with me, but if you come to my chat room trying to insult me, I don't tolerate that. This is my house, and nobody's going to come in my house trying to disrespect me. You will be blocked and banned. But anyway, so they had the hearing today. These allegations of sexual assault have surfaced. Also, there are a total of 5 different people who are accusing Brett Kavanaugh of sexual misconduct. And so this is a very serious situation. So you have these 2 people testify, and I'm basically going to tell you who I thought was more credible. You could tell just by the title who I think is more credible. But I want to go into it. I want to explain why I think they're more credible. But before I do that, I just want to provide you all with some background information. And I'm going to start doing that by sharing my screen. And I will get to your comments in a second. If you all can just bear with me a minute. Just bear with me 1 second. Okay. Yeah, so this is an article in the New York Times. It includes Christine Ford's entire prepared statement that she read during the testimony. And what I'm going to do is just go to the section where she talks about what actually happened to her, what she alleges happened. And I'm just going to summarize some of the things. I'm not going to read it verbatim. I'm just going to skim through it and go to the highlights of her statement. for those of you who have not read this statement or did not listen to the hearings, I will include this article so that you can read it for yourself. And also I will include video footage of the actual hearing so that you can watch it for yourself and judge it for yourself. But this is what she said. She said, you know, she was at this small gathering. There were people drinking beer in a small living room on the first floor. She had one beer that evening. She said that Brett Kavanaugh and this other boy at the time, and this was when in high school, like over 30 years ago, were visibly drunk. So when she got there, they were already visibly drunk. Early in the evening, she says that she went up a narrow set of stairs leading from the living room to the second floor. She went up there to use the restroom. When she got to the top of the stairs, she says that she was pushed into a bedroom. She said that she could not see who pushed her, but she said that Brett Kavanaugh and this other boy by the name of Mark came into the bedroom and locked the door behind them. Music was already playing in the bedroom, but they turned it up louder. And she doesn't know if it was Brett Kavanaugh or the other guy who turned up the music. She says that she was pushed onto the bed and Brett Kavanaugh got on top of her and began running his hands all over her body and grinding his hips into her. She yelled, hoping somebody downstairs would hear her. She tried to get away from him, but the weight of his body was heavy. She said that he groped her and he tried to take her clothes off. He had a hard time because he was drunk. And she also said that she was wearing a one-piece bathing suit under her clothes. And she said that she believes that he was going to rape her. She tried to yell for help. And when she did, she said that Brett Kavanaugh put his hand over her mouth to stop her from screaming. She says that she was terrified. And she said it was hard for her to breathe, and she thought Brett Kavanaugh was going to accidentally kill her. She says that Brett Kavanaugh and Mark were drunkenly laughing during the attack. And during her testimony, she said that that was the thing that stood out the most. The fact that these guys were laughing while they were sexually assaulting her and abusing her. That's the thing that stood out in her mind. And she said that this guy, Mark, was urging Brett Kavanaugh on. Although at times he told Brett to stop. And then she says at times she was looking at this other guy, Mark, hoping that he would try to help her, but he never did. And during the assault, this guy, Mark, came over and started jumping on the bed twice while Brett was on top of her. This is what she says. And then the last time he says that, no, she says that he was jumping on the bed and they toppled over and Brett was no longer on top of her and she got up and ran out of the room. And then what she did is she locked herself in the bathroom. And then after she heard them leave, that's when she came out and left the house. And for the longest time, she did not tell anybody this story. And for most people that understand what victims of sexual abuse go through, they understand that they suffer from shame. They understand that they are afraid to tell their stories often. And the thing is, a lot of people may have this false perception that somehow she just started talking about this after he was nominated for the Supreme Court. But the fact of the matter is she had prior discussions well before Brett Kavanaugh was nominated, identifying this man as the perpetrator. So this is not some political witch hunt. This is not some woman that's vindictive that just made up this story. This is a woman who reported this incident to different people that were close to her. And she identified him as one of the people involved. So this is not some invention that just happened overnight. So she read that statement. She responded to the questions from the senators and the committee. And this is why I find her testimony to be credible. First of all, I'll start with the first point that I made, the fact that she told other people about this well before he was even nominated for the Supreme Court. Years before this, she told people and identified him as the perpetrator. So that adds credibility to her statement. Also, she was very consistent during her testimony. She was forthright. When people asked her questions, she answered them. When she was given past statements that she made, she reviewed them and she clarified clearly and precisely. She supports an FBI investigation of this incident. That adds credibility to what she had to say. Also, her demeanor, the way she was acting when she was testifying, the emotion, the raw emotion that you could hear in her voice, the way that she expressed herself, her demeanor spoke truth to me. That's the impression that I got. I got the impression that what she was saying was true based on how she was behaving, how she was responding. And from what I recall, if I recall correctly, this woman had a lie detector test done and she passed, if I'm not mistaken. As far as I'm concerned, she was more credible to me than Anita Hill was during the Clarence Thomas hearings. And I'll basically, sum up why I think she was more credible. Number one, she didn't, like, when Anita Hill read her statement, it was like she was reading any old statement made by anybody. Like if I picked up a book in here and just started reading some pages, it was detached. There was no emotion along with her testimony. That's what made her, I think that she was credible, but she was not as credible as Dr. Ford was. I think Dr. Ford's statements were credible. Also, this is another thing that really stands out to me in terms of credibility, just the details in which she explained what happened. The way she explained it, the way she talked about every aspect of what happened that day and how she felt and what her experience was, it was so clear and so vivid. Again, I encourage you all to read the article and also watch the testimony if you haven't watched it. So those are some of the reasons why I think that she was far more credible than this guy, Brett Kavanaugh. And now I'm going to go through why I think that he was not credible at all. First of all, his demeanor did not come across as somebody that's credible. He was asked several times, basic questions, and he evaded those questions. That tells me that this man has something to hide. He was asked whether or not he supports an FBI investigation of this whole thing. And he kept trying to wiggle his way out of it and basically say, well, it's up to the committee to decide whether or not there should be an FBI investigation. First of all, if I knew that somebody was trying to frame me and set me up and discredit me and destroy my reputation, I would want an FBI investigation. I would want an investigation, a thorough investigation. These people claim to be patriots. They claim to have so much faith in law enforcement. If they have that kind of faith in law enforcement, why not have law enforcement conduct an investigation? There was an investigation during that Anita Hill situation, during the Clarence Thomas hearings. Why can't there be an investigation now? And the only answer as to why is because of politics. That's what it boils down to. These Republicans have power and they don't want to give up that power. They don't want to end up losing this particular seat in the Supreme Court or this particular nominee. So they're doing everything that they can to avoid an investigation or any kind of delay. If they really want to know the facts, they need to have an investigation. And if this guy, Brett Kavanaugh, thought he was so innocent and thought that, this was some kind of setup and some kind of framing of him, he would be the first person to be calling for a thorough investigation to discredit this woman if she's lying, prove her wrong if she's lying. That's what he would want to do. He would call for an investigation. But at every turn, this man kept trying to avoid that issue. He wouldn't answer yes or no, despite the fact that multiple senators asked this man that basic question. This is not rocket science. Either you support an investigation or you don't. And it's clear that this man obviously does not support an investigation. This man came across as phony to me. You know, here you have a grown-ass man crying during a hearing. Crying, you know, cracking under pressure and crying like a baby. I mean, I don't think he's crying because he's innocent. You know, I think he's crying because all this stuff has come out against him, because his reputation is being damaged and all that kind of stuff. That's why this man is crying. That's why this man is all emotional and stuff like that. It has nothing to do with him being innocent. This man was melodramatic. This man was overly emotional during these hearings. And that just tells me that this guy is in the wrong. If you are standing on truth, if you know good and damn well that you're innocent, then you're going to have a more calm demeanor. You're going to fully explain yourself. But this guy didn't do that. This guy was emotional. This guy was rude. This guy was crass. This guy was evasive. And all that points to the fact that this guy has very little credibility as far as I'm concerned. You know, another thing is this, you know, they kept asking him about, you know, him consuming alcohol, you know, about the fact that this guy was a drunkard in high school and in college. They were asking him about this. You know, they asked him, have you ever had memory lapses after drinking a lot of alcohol? And first of all, this guy in his yearbook, he acknowledges having, you know, drinking like crazy and partying like crazy and all that kind of stuff. But now all of a sudden that he's nominated, he wants to pretend like he's some choir boy. He wants to pretend like, well, I got drunk a couple of times, but I didn't pass out. I didn't, you know, lose my memory or anything like that. And I think that it's very probable and likely that this man was an alcoholic or may still be an alcoholic. And I think that it's possible that this man may have had so much to drink that he may not recall exactly what happened that day. So, I mean, the fact that you have a man that's basically admitting that he got drunk on a regular basis in high school and college, trying to convince people that he never had memory lapses or never blacked out. That's nonsense. That's hard to believe. That's incredible. You know, this woman spelled out all these details. And here you had this guy that's just, you know, evasive. This guy that's making these statements that are incredible. And then this guy was talking about this calendar that he has where he documents everything. You know, he claims to document everything that he did way back then, way back in the 80s. And I just find that hard to believe, man. You know, I just find that very difficult to believe that somebody would document everything that they did every day of the year and all that kind of stuff going way back then. I find that very hard to believe. And even if he did like keep track of some of the things that he did, of course, he's not going to put in there, yeah, I raped or tried to rape Christine Ford back in the day. He's not going to have that in his diary or his calendar or whatever. Yeah, so I mean, this guy is just hard to believe. You know, he's defensive. And the thing that makes me think about this is, you know, number one, it's like, this guy is not fit to be a Supreme Court justice. You know, I know that he's like has all these great academic credentials. You know, he went to the best schools and all that kind of stuff. But when it comes to his temperament and when it comes to his honesty, I think that those two things disqualify this man. They disqualify him. You know, this man was argumentative. He was very rude. He was, you know, melodramatic. One minute he's crying, the next minute he's confrontational and overly aggressive. And that tells me that he has something to hide. That tells me that this man doesn't have the kind of temperament that we need on a U.S. Supreme Court. And here you have 5 women who have accused him of sexual type of deviant behavior and sexual abuse or assault and all that kind of stuff. This is very serious. Somebody that's accused of these types of acts needs to be thoroughly investigated. This is not something that can just be brushed over and passed aside and all that kind of stuff. The FBI should conduct an investigation. And if Congress, if those members of that committee were serious about trying to find out what actually happened, then they would call for the FBI to conduct an investigation. It's just that simple. And somebody that's accused of doing these types of things, if these allegations are true, and I have every reason to believe they're true after hearing Dr. Ford's testimony, if they're true, this man is not fit to judge anybody or any case. You know, somebody that commits these types of crimes against women, how should such a man be in a position to render decisions about women's rights and women's issues? How should such a man be able to decide decisions that affect our civil rights and our liberties when he violated the liberties and rights of these women allegedly? I mean, this man is not fit to serve in the Supreme Court, you know, for those reasons alone. And then when you go into his far right politics, this man is not fit to serve. This man is going to, if he's appointed, the direction of the Supreme Court is going to drastically change. You know, basic rights that we take for granted could end up being completely jeopardized, but that's a whole nother issue. So what I want to do is go over some of the allegations that these women raised, and I will get to your comments in a second. So y'all just bear with me. I'm going to go to his accusers and just summarize some of the things that they're accusing him of. So if y'all could bear with me 1 second. Okay, so these are his accusers. We already talked about, and I'll post this in the description box as well. We already talked about Christine Ford, her allegations. The next person is Deborah Ramirez. She accuses him of this. She says, you know, while she was at Yale University from, you know, 1983 to 84, a small group of students sat in a circle and people selected who had to take a drink. She recalled saying that she was chosen frequently. She became drunk. And she said that suddenly she saw a penis in her face. And it was Judge Kavanaugh, according to her. He was the one standing with his penis in her face. This is what this guy did. And then one of the people told her to kiss his penis or whatever. This is somebody that's trying to be on the U.S. Supreme Court doing this stuff. And then the article goes into the background of each one of these accusers. You all can read this. I'll post it in the description box as soon as I get a chance to. You have this woman, Julie Swednick, and she says that she observed Kavanaugh engaged in sexual misconduct at parties when he was a student at Georgetown Prep School in the 80s. She says that she observed Kavanaugh at parties where women were verbally abused, inappropriately touched, and gang raped. This is what she accuses him of. These are very serious allegations that should be investigated. But those Republicans don't want to have an investigation because they're not interested in the facts. Instead, they're interested in showboating, you know, putting on a show, defending this man against these allegations. They should have these people brought forth as well to talk about this stuff. And then there's some other allegations, and I know that there's at least one other allegation. So this says that there was an anonymous letter sent to a representative, you know, a member of Congress, a senator in Colorado. Yeah, it says that her daughter witnessed Kavanaugh drunkenly push her friend, a woman he was dating, up against a wall very aggressively and sexually after they left a bar in 1998. And, of course, he's denying all this stuff. And there's at least one other accuser. When I get a chat, like I'll probably post links to a more recent article that has all the accusers' information in it so that you all can check it out for yourself. But those are my initial comments, and I'm going to go to the chat room real quick to respond to some of the things that you're saying, and then I'm going to provide my assessment of some of the members of Congress. I want to talk about Cory Booker and his style of questioning Kavanaugh, and also Kamala Harris. I like, some of the things that she was saying during this whole thing. So let me go to your comments real quick. Fresh and sassy, plant-based living said he seemed to be drunk during the hearing. That's funny. And True Royal Family said her husband said the same thing. He was drunk. Now he may have had a few because he was acting a little peculiar, man. I mean, first of all, crying. I mean, this guy was crying during during this testimony, man. And then he was like having these emotional outbursts and stuff, like really arguing with the senators and then asking these senators questions when he's supposed to be the one being questioned. So he was acting very erratic. So I would not be surprised if he didn't have a few before that hearing, man. I wouldn't be surprised at all. And True Royal Family said, I noticed he was drinking lots of water today. Yeah, that's what they do when they're all nervous and shook. They gotta like, drink water and stuff. Shout out to True Royal Family. Shout out to Fresh and Sassy. Shout out to B1 Intellectual. One Love, One Life said he should go ahead and admit it. At the rate things are going, it's not as if it would negatively impact his confirmation. Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, man, the way these people are so loyal to Donald Trump, you would have them defending him even if he admitted to doing this stuff. They would still say he should be appointed and stuff like that. They would still try to excuse him and, defend him and rationalize what he did and stuff. That's just how lost a lot of these Trump supporters are. I saw this thing where one of these Trump supporters was saying, well, they don't mind, it's no big deal for a woman to be sexually assaulted. That's how much they support Donald Trump. But yeah, I mean, his behavior was erratic, man. I was listening. Actually, I wasn't listening to something. I was on Facebook and I saw this meme. And y'all know how I feel about Hillary Clinton. I don't have much love for her or whatever. But, they was talking about how she went through all these hours of grilling testimony. Like she was brought before, the Senate committee, and they were asking her all these questions about Benghazi. And she stood strong doing the whole thing. She didn't break down crying. But you had this guy, Kavanaugh, in his first few minutes addressing the committee, he was crying and stuff like that. He's crying because he knows he did something wrong, man. That's what it comes down to. And it's just the pressure coming down on him. And I think that if things keep going the way they are right now, it's possible that Donald Trump may drop him like a hot potato too. I mean, Trump doesn't have any loyalty despite all this stuff he says. Yeah, so somebody said, well, if she's afraid of telling her story, then why does she come out now? Yeah, I mean, people say that all the time. I mean, The only thing I'll say about that is this, she talked about how she thought like that it was important that this information be known to the public. She felt like it was her civic responsibility at this point that the public know about this before this man be appointed to the Supreme Court. And this is nothing new. All you have to do is go on Google and search like how victims of sexual assault respond and deal with that trauma. And you will find that there's nothing unusual about victims not sharing their story immediately. Victims keeping their story secrets for years upon years. That's nothing unusual. But people want to demonize those people for reacting in that kind of way. They want to demonize the victim, make the victim into some kind of perpetrator. And that's the thing about this that really sickens me with this guy, Kavanaugh. He's painting himself as the victim when he's the person who allegedly tried to rape this woman. He's the person that had his hand over this woman's mouth, making it hard for her to breathe. He's the one. He's the one that's accused by 5 people of sexual misconduct. He is not a victim. And I'm consistent here. Like, you all have seen my videos about Bill Cosby and all that kind of stuff. I think that just like Bill Cosby was brought to justice, Kavanaugh and all those other white men that commit these types of acts need to be brought to justice. And the first step is to make sure that this guy is not appointed to the Supreme Court. And before we even get to that point, at least have an investigation, man. They need to investigate this guy. These are very serious allegations. Law enforcement needs to be involved. They need to conduct an investigation. So I think that she did the right thing by letting people know about this. And that's one thing that kept getting at me. Like, this guy kept trying to avoid his drunkardness by talking about how much of a great student he was, about how he was the top of his class and this and that. You can still be at the top of your class and still have an alcoholic problem. You can still be the top of your class and be a drunkard and still engage in rowdy behavior at parties. You can still be the top of your game and still engage in this kind of sexual misconduct and be a sexual predator. I just think that undermined everything that he was trying to do. This guy kept going on and on about his accomplishments instead of dealing with these very real questions about his alcohol abuse, frankly. I mean, and then you got to ask yourself, do you want somebody like this as your Supreme Court justice, somebody with a drinking issue? And I don't know if it's as bad as it was when he was in high school or college, but I wouldn't be surprised. The man continues. He said he continues to drink now. I mean, somebody with this kind of history, you would think that they would not even be drinking at this point with that kind of past and baggage. Shout out to Elaine Lloyd. She said, "This is what I like." Yeah, so I see that somebody else already responded. Yeah, and then Cinnamon Brown Sugar said, and she passed the polygraph. Again, yeah, that's the point that I was making earlier. She took a lie detector test and passed it. When will Kavanaugh take a lie detector test? Will he take one? Will he, or has he taken one? If not, why not? This man talks about how he wants to clear his name. If you want to clear your name, again, ask the FBI to conduct an investigation. Call on the committee to demand that the FBI investigate. But he will never do that because he knows that he is lying. That's what I believe. Yeah, and True Royal said he was pissed to the core today. Absolutely, he was going off. Yeah, so Elaine Lloyd said the main thing that made her credible is the FBI investigation. And then the guy Kavanaugh adamantly denied one. Elaine Lloyd said she watched it all. It was long. Yeah, it was long. I was listening to it off and on while I was at work today. Yeah, he definitely didn't want to answer the questions. So B Intellectual said Anita Hill is an opportunist. I watched her live testimony. I don't know if she's an opportunist. And I do believe her. You know, I do believe Anita Hill, but I just don't think that she came off as well as Dr. Ford did. You know, I agree. I believe that Anita Hill told the truth. I mean, again, like when you go to all those details she was providing about Clarence Thomas, all that despicable behavior. I mean, it was too detailed for her to have made that stuff up. And the same is true in this situation. Too much detail, too many facts for it to be false. Unless these people are just hell of a, storytellers, some great actors. These people, if they were great, if they are acting, they deserve the Oscar, because these people, they don't come across like they're telling a lie. Whereas this guy, Kavanaugh, acts like he's telling a lie. You know, like a kid, if you catch him in a lie, they get all animated to cover up the lie. That's what he looked like today. Yeah, that's a good question. What opportunity was Anita Hill seeking? I mean, she didn't benefit from participating in those hearings at all. So I don't think that it was about her being an opportunist or anything like that. Yeah, so somebody said, well, what and how would the FBI investigate this? They would go talk to witnesses, get statements, and then they would release a report on, what they observed and what they found and all that kind of stuff. And, the fact that this guy is lying, I think that that's one of the biggest things, that he's lying under oath right now. He's committing perjury right now with all these false statements that he's making about not being involved in this incident and this and that. And, he keeps saying, well, these other people said that this party, they weren't at the party or this didn't happen and blah, blah, blah. I think that a lot of the people that he's talking about are people that could be implicated. So it's in their interest to pretend like this stuff didn't happen. Yeah, so Elaine Lloyd says, I think that Brett Kavanaugh had some skeletons in his closet and he doesn't want the FBI digging around in it. Yeah, that's true. True Oil said, I was tripping off of all the water he was drinking today. So Elaine Lloyd said, I actually believe the calendar. Um, he needed an alibi, so he held on to that calendar. Yeah, I mean, he may have kept a calendar. He claims that his father did that before him, and he followed his father's example by keeping this calendar and stuff. But it's just something nutty about that, man. Somebody just like keeping a calendar of everything that they do and then like holding on to it all these years later. I mean, something about that doesn't sound right to me, man. It sounds peculiar. It sounds absurd and ridiculous. At least to me, man. Let me go back up here 1 second. Okay. Yeah, and he was actually like when people were asking him about his drinking habits and stuff like that, he, like True Royal said, he was asking them if they like beer and this and that. He was turning the questions on them, asking about their drinking habits and stuff. That just tells me that he's not credible, man. So R. Brown said, you got it backwards. He says, you got it backwards. Kavanaugh is more credible. How in the hell is he more credible? Explain to me how he's more credible. It's like, these trolls, they see the title and they just start like invading the chat room with nonsense without backing it up. Yeah, so Elaine Lloyd said you're wrong about why he was crying. I think he was trying to come across emotional about the allegations. Yeah, I beg to differ. I just think that I don't, he may have been trying to impress them, but I think that he's caught up in his emotions for a variety of reasons. Like he probably never thought he would be going through this. He probably thought he was just going to sail through like he did when he uh, got appointed before to the federal bench. So he probably thought he would have no problems. And it's probably like just the stress of this whole situation is coming down on him. Him knowing that, I think deep down he knows that he did this. He knows it. And he's like, his emotions are just getting the best of him. And he's lashing out and he's crying and stuff. He's very unstable. He's unhinged because he knows that he did this stuff. And I think that part of it may be he's trying to win sympathy, but a man doesn't win sympathy by crying. Ain't nobody sympathizing with him, man. Most of the time when men are crying, they're viewed as weak and soft. They're not, uh, like supported for crying, man. So I don't think it's about that. And he was coming off, he was coming off kind of fake with those tears, like crying so much. So I agree with that aspect of what you're saying. Yeah, so this one person is claiming that this person, R. Brown, is talking about this issue about her, about Dr. Ford and her fear of flight, basically trying to say, well, she flies all the time and blah, blah, blah. You know, I don't think that that's a strong point. I mean, that's a very weak point to try to discredit her. What about the story she told? I mean, you're talking about some old irrelevant stuff that doesn't really go to the core of what we're talking about. What about her story is not credible? Her story about what happened that day, all the details that she provided, the fact that she told people about this well before this guy got nominated, well, years before this stuff. She mentioned him before anybody really even knew him like that. So how is that not credible? And you said Kavanaugh never knew that lady. He acknowledged that he heard of her and stuff like that. He didn't say he never heard of her. Did you listen to the testimony today? Oh, so Elaine Lloyd was saying she likes the political conversations that I have on here. Yeah, I love talking about politics, man. Unfortunately, a lot of people aren't really into politics like that, at least here on YouTube. Like a video like this is very important. This is very important. Who will be the next Supreme Court justice? Because that can determine all kinds of rights we have. But people would rather talk about foolishness on here. Some of these people, you can't even emphasize the importance of voting and stuff. They don't even realize the importance of the Supreme Court. They would rather talk about, frivolous stuff, like, frivolous things, instead of these types of real things that matter. They're more concerned with who somebody's sleeping with than they are concerned with their civil rights and human rights and, who's in the White House and who's your congressman. They're more caught up with foolishness, man. And unfortunately, that's what people love. People love drama and other things that are less relevant to our lives. They're more caught up in entertainment. But yeah, I like talking about politics. I studied politics when I was in undergrad. I was a political science major. So yeah, I like political conversations too. You know, that's why I started my blog to talk about politics, my written blog way back in the day. And I'm continuing blogging with this channel. Um, so I'm glad that you like politics. Hold on one second. Westwood 123X said this whole country is a mockery. And yeah, you could say that this whole process in many ways is a mockery. I mean, the fact that you had these people, they're not concerned about the truth, unfortunately. Like you have the Republicans on one side, the Democrats on the other side. You got these Republicans just universally defending this accused attempted rapist, defending him. like vouching for this guy just because he's a Republican. They're not trying to get to the bottom of the facts. They're not trying to make sure that they have the right person for this appointment. They're more concerned with scoring political points. They are more concerned with that than they are concerned with civil rights, human rights, and the American people. So, yeah, I mean, in a lot of ways, this country is a mockery. This president is a clown and a joke. I mean, you all saw him speak before the UN, where he was talking about how his administration was the greatest administration ever, for the most part. Accomplished more things in 2 years than most administrations accomplished during their whole term. And the world laughed at this clown. He was like Bozo the Clown, man. That's what he was like. So he is a mockery. He is a clown and a joke. And this nation is becoming a clown and a joke because of the people that we allow to be in leadership positions like him. I don't think this. Westwood is complaining about the Me Too movement. I don't think that that's anything to complain about, the Me Too movement. I think that that's a good thing. It's long overdue. Women have been sexually harassed and sexually abused for way too long. And it's great that you have people that are speaking out against this stuff. There was a time when the sexual harassment was normal. It was just part of life. People, women are regularly abused as girls and then as women. It's about time that you have a Me Too movement. Think about your own daughters or your sisters or your mothers. I think that Me Too is good. Like, as long as, what needs to happen is we need to make sure that the criminal justice system goes after everybody that violates people's rights, everyone that abuses women, regardless of their race or their status and all that kind of stuff. But too often you do see situations where these white guys are able to get away with stuff, just like you have situations just in any kind of criminal proceeding where white people get lesser sentences than black people do. But because of that, you're not, it doesn't make sense to say, well, because this white man was able to get away with murdering people, then I want this black man to get away with murdering people. Or because this white man got away with rape, I want this black man to be able to get away with rape. That doesn't add up to me. This sports caster pointed out, and I'm drawing a blank on her name, but I'll post a link in the description box when I get a chance to. She basically said that that's trash logic, man. But yeah, I don't have any problem with the Me Too movement, man, as long as black women's rights are being protected as well. I mean, you had the founder of that movement is a black woman, but now the face of it has become white. But black women, as long as black women's rights are equally protected. And that brings me to another thing about this particular case. I was having a discussion with a colleague, and we were just talking about this. We were talking about Anita Hill, and I was like, well, Anita Hill had all this testimony about Clarence Thomas, and despite all that testimony she gave, this man was still appointed to the Supreme Court. And I was like, I wouldn't be surprised if the same thing happened to Brett Kavanaugh, given what happened to Clarence Thomas. And she basically said, well, this situation is different. Unfortunately, because these are white women involved in this particular case, they may treat this differently. Because of the number of accusers, they may treat this differently as well. And that just brings us to a sad reality that when black women are the victims of these types of things, of sexual harassment or sexual abuse, people take it less seriously. People don't view it as some urgent issue that needs to be addressed, unfortunately. And it's not just the white society that takes that perspective. It's our own people. All you have to do is look at R. Kelly and how people are dealing with that. How you have all these black people defending that pedophile, defending that scumbag, making excuses for that scumbag. But I could go on and on about that. That's a whole nother issue. Yeah, so somebody's going on and on about Bill Cosby. I'm not talking about that in this. I already did. I've done videos about that, and it's just a shame that people defend Bill Cosby blindly, turn him into some race martyr and stuff like that, and make him out to be Malcolm X or something. When he's nothing but even though he did great things for, colleges and all that kind of stuff, giving money to black colleges, that doesn't give him a license to sexually abuse people. This man, even though he gave that money to those black colleges, he talked down to black people, made mockery of black people, disrespected poor black people, joked about the names that black people have. But yet some people on here want to paint him out to be some kind of martyr. They want to paint him out to be some kind of superhero that the white man is trying to take down. Come on, man, get the hell out of here with that stuff, man. They trying to refer to something that happened way back in the 90s when he tried to buy NBC. And they expect us to believe that all these years later, well after his failed attempt to purchase NBC, these conspirators plotted to get dozens of women together from different time periods in Cosby's life, get them all together, round them up, and get them to tell the same story. Do you know how ridiculous that sounds? And I'm not going to go any further with that. I've done plenty of videos on Cosby or whatever. I'll just point, hopefully I'll be able to put a link to a video with Michael Eric Dyson breaking down this issue. Someone on my Facebook page posted that, actually on my personal Facebook, one of my friends posted this video. I will include it in the description box once I get a chance to. Just raising very serious questions, man. My point is this, just like I took a hard line against Bill Cosby, I'm taking a hard line against this Kavanaugh guy. I think that there should be an investigation. And, I just think that somebody like this is just, assuming that these allegations are true, he's not fit to serve as a justice. Elaine Lloyd said it's not nutty. It is nutty to keep a calendar from 30 years ago, man. Who do you know that does that, man? That calendars everything. As an employer, as a lawyer, I have to calendar, court dates or deadlines and all that kind of stuff, which I regularly do. And I do have a lot of my calendars just from my court dates, and deadlines and all that stuff. I keep those in my office, but I don't have a personal calendar where I'm personally, putting information on there about my workouts or, about my social activities, every social activity I'm engaged in, all that kind of stuff, what parties I went to, who I was meeting with. It just tells you that this guy is anal retentive if he actually does this stuff, if this is real. It's just crazy, man. I think there's something wrong with him. Normal people don't do that kind of stuff, man. But that's something else. I don't want to go off too far. Hold on, y'all. So somebody says, what does his drinking have to do with him raping somebody? That's important because the woman, if you were here at the beginning, she says that when she arrived at that house, Brett Kavanaugh was already intoxicated. He was already messed up. And when people are drunk, they lose their faculties. A lot of times they lose memories and they engage in risky and reckless type of behavior. That's why it matters, man. This should be common sense. She says that he was drunk and he was on top of her, thrusting on her, covering her mouth, trying to take off her clothes. That matters. It matters that he was intoxicated. And that's why they kept asking him about it. This should be common sense. So somebody, True Royal said, I don't like how the Me Too goes after black men. I mean, yeah, I just differ on that, man. Like, nobody's going after Bill Cosby, for instance. You know, he went after himself when he decided to engage in all that activity against all those women. You know, that's the thing. So Hasib too said that he should be disbarred and disbenched. Yeah, they need to, I mean, there should be an investigation. And if they find out that this man lied under oath, then yeah, he can be disbarred for that. He can be disbarred for committing perjury. You know, when Bill Clinton got, impeached, and when they found him liable for perjury or whatever, he lost his law license. He was disbarred. Do I think that that'll happen here? You know, it's really unlikely. You know, I would be surprised if that would happen. And that brings me to another point about the statute of limitations. I'm going to go to this article real quick that I saw when I did a quick search on this issue. So some people are probably wondering whether or not Dr. Ford can bring charges against him. And I'll show this article so that you all can see it. I'll post this in the description box when I get a chance to, but it basically points out how it's unlikely that he will be prosecuted in Maryland, even though right now there's no statute of limitation on sexual assault and rape in Maryland. And that's where this occurred. At the time when this crime allegedly occurred, there was like a 1-year statute of limitations. And according to legal experts, they say that he's basically grandfathered into the old statute of limitations. And for that reason, it would be difficult to bring charges against him now. So I just wanted to point that out to you if you all were curious about that. But that doesn't stop him from being indicted for perjury. You know, he can still be indicted for that if he lied under oath. Just bear with me 1 second. Shout out to Real Game Radio, LA. What's good? Elaine Lloyd says she won't be surprised if he gets confirmed. You know, I wouldn't be surprised either. That's what I was telling my colleague. I wouldn't be surprised either. So Hasib said the lie detector tests do not work with sociopaths. Yeah, and I've heard that, like, if somebody is truly detached, like, they can really make themselves emotionally calm and just tell a bold-faced lie, you know, and there are people who are trained to beat lie detector tests. But I think that there's, you know, it can't hurt to have a lie detector test done from, you know, a law enforcement perspective, even though, like, they don't use lie detector tests in court and all that kind of stuff is inadmissible. I think it does say something about somebody who's willing to sit before a machine and, you know, be interrogated. You know, I think that it says a lot about this woman and just her courage, you know, because she could have sat back and stayed out of the public eye and not raised this issue, but she had the courage to step forward, you know, to ensure that she fulfilled her civic duty to make sure that people were aware of these facts, these alleged facts. So let me just go through these comments. Cali guy said those white women lied. And come on, man. It was black women as well. I mean, that's what people keep conveniently forgetting, that there were black women that Bill Cosby allegedly drugged and sexually assaulted. But people want to conveniently forget that part. All those people aren't lying. All those dozens of people aren't lying, man. I mean, people find little inconsistencies in some of these stories and they take that and they run with it and they assume that everybody's lying. A jury heard the evidence. They read the deposition that Bill Cosby gave, where he admitted to giving women quaaludes to have sex with them, when he admitted that he wasn't sure whether or not Andrea Constant consented or not. He said that even though he was between consent and rejection, he went forward anyway. And it was blurry. He went forward anyway. Y'all conveniently ignore that. His own statements got him convicted. He was found guilty in a court of law. The trier of fact determined that those women that testified against him were more credible. So it's a done deal. He has been found guilty by a court of law. It's a wrap for him. He's been sentenced. It's a wrap for him. So, you know, I'm just sick of this stuff, man. You know, I know that, you know, some people may have been discredited and some of the women may have lied, but you can't tell me that all those dozens of women lied, especially when you had a conviction based on the evidence that was submitted and admitted into evidence. You know, based on Bill Cosby's own deposition. These are statements that he made under oath. His own statements. That's what convicted him. Bill Cosby convicted himself with his own statements and his own action. There was no conspiracy against that guy. Yeah, but I'm not going to go off. I already did enough Bill Cosby videos. This video is not about Bill Cosby. Bill Cosby is getting what he deserves, and I think that all these other people need to get what they deserve as well. I did other videos. If y'all want to debate, go to those videos where I'm thoroughly addressing that. But yeah, I want to thank y'all. I don't want to keep y'all too long. I just wanted to get this off my chest, tell y'all what I think about this hearing. And for those of you who are watching the playback, you know, leave your comments. You know, I look forward to reading your comments, hearing what you have to say about this. Tell me who you thought was more credible and why did you think they were more credible. Also, if you're not subscribed to this channel, subscribe. Like my videos and share my videos. I'm trying to make this channel expand. You know, I want to get up to at least 10,000 subscribers, man. You can't tell me that these other YouTubers are better than your man, New Possibilities. You know, I think I have some great content on here, man. not to toot my own horn, but beep, beep. Yeah, man. So, yeah, spread the word about my channel. Sub to my channel. If you're watching this and you like what you hear, and hell, even if you don't like what you hear, you can sub anyway, man. But anyway, I want to say peace and blessings to each and every one of you. Thank you for tuning in.